Welcome back to the Schmidt Show PDX. I'm Mike Schmidt, former Multnomah County District Attorney, amateur dart enthusiast, and someone who just can't stop thinking about how the city of Portland runs. Listen, it has been a year for Portland City Council. We are just a year and a half into this nascent form of government, and in that time, this council has already survived through 2 budget sessions, has elected 2 different council presidents, and half the council is already up for re-election. A year and a half in, and they are dealing with a structural revenue shortfall that's not going away, no matter how many couch cushions get checked. And on top of all of that, they're staring down a billionaire who is, depending on how charitably you want to frame it, either negotiating hard or holding a beloved franchise hostage in exchange for arena renovations. It's a lot. And today's guest is a guy in the middle of most of it. If history was to label this guest, it may label him the reluctant president, the man who, after 13 deadlocked votes between Portland's progressive and moderate factions, was the compromise everybody could live with. He didn't seek the job. He said as much publicly more than once, but he did take it. He's also a fierce advocate for Portland's music scene, a musician himself, a guy who wants Portland to own its identity as a music city instead of just talking about it. And before any of this, he was also a small business owner running Love Cup in Selwood for 5 years, a sandwich and coffee shop. So he's not just theorizing about what it's like to run a small business in this city. He's lived it. Today, we're going to get into all of it, the presidency, the budget, the music platform, his small business experience, and we're going to spend a good chunk of time on the Moda Center because there's a lot going on there that deserves real scrutiny. And along the way, I want to ask him, if anything, what can Portland learn from what's happening 3,000 miles away in New York City, where a very different mayor just took office, promising to govern expansively and audaciously. Let's get into it. Council President Jamie Dunphy, welcome to the show. I have to.
I need more fanfare in my life.
Dude, I want to play the whole thing, but that would be annoying. Have you considered a walk-in song?
I mean, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
This is that's why I wanted to have you on the program, is so that we could discuss, the presidential walk. It feels like you should have one. So what are you thinking about?
My walk-in song is Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel.
I love it.
Absolutely. Whether if I'm walking onto a baseball field or onto the council dais, that's how I'm walking out.
It actually works well for both.
Absolutely.
Well, good. I expect to see your presidency institute these immediate changes.
Really important things.
Very important. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. As we get started, I'd just like you to tell people a little bit about who you are.
Yeah. Well, I have been in Portland since I went to high school. I graduated from Grant back in 2002. I went to PCC and PSU. I'm a dad. I live in the Park Rose neighborhood. I've got 2 goats. I've got 2 dogs. I've got a 20-year-old cat. And I've been in
a 20-year-old cat.
She is really unpleasant and just
as she deserves to be.
Oh, she's had a long life, and she deserves every minute of it. But God, she is skin and bones. Yeah, and I've been I spent my 20s as a touring musician. I got to go tour around the country with my best friends, playing music and seeing other places and experiencing the rest of this country. But I never left Portland. I've been in Portland ever since then, and it's a little bit weird to me to be in the town I went to high school in. God, I love Portland, and I have not found a place I like better. And so I'm really happy to still be here. I love this town.
That's awesome. I, started my life in upstate New York.
Yeah.
And a lot about Oregon, a lot about Portland actually topographically reminds me of upstate New York. It's lush, it's green. I always make the joke to people that in Oregon, we say we have lakes, but we actually have ponds. Yeah. And in New York, they say they have mountains, but they actually have hills.
Yes.
But there's a lot of shared, commonalities there that makes me love this place. But like you, I've been in other cities. I've moved around a little bit. spent the bulk of my other time in New Orleans, but I've lived in Houston. I've spent enough time in New York City. I spent a summer in Boston. So I've gotten a feel for some other places. And I agree with you, man. This is why I set up roots or took down roots here.
Yeah, this is the place I want to be. I got to leave at some point. I got to go figure something out after whatever this chapter of my life is. But I plan on being here the long term.
What was your favorite city to tour in outside of Portland? Because of course that would be your favorite. But,
well, of course,
outside of Portland.
You know, LA was always really fun. Yeah. It was a weird city to play in, but we would always end up playing a few dates down in LA, and it just had a different vibe. I was always happy to be there and always happy to go home.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that seems right. Well, you and I have known each other for a good amount of time at this point, because you and my wife actually both worked at the same summer camp when we were growing up.
When we were little babies.
Yeah, out at Oxbow Park.
Yeah, and it's Claire is one of my favorite people. And Mike, I've had the privilege of knowing you for, going on 2 decades at this point.
Yeah.
And it is funny how just a couple of tall random dudes ended up in this level of public service.
Isn't that funny when you think back on it, right? And we're like sitting in the backyard almost 20 years ago at this point, and we're like playing badminton and be like, hey, just goofing off.
Just a bunch of dorks, and now we've got authority. And people respect our opinions on things. It's wild.
Well, I personally think that who better than to be in these positions than people who've like lived it and who've been a part of this community and who do silly things like play badminton and that. So I want to start us off at your presidency, Your Highness. I would term, and maybe it's not even my term, others have, and yourself. I would sum up your presidency as the reluctant presidency.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Portlanders were watching probably too long as it took this council to select our second ever president. So tell us just a little bit about that. There were like 13 votes to get to this point.
Yeah, it was multiple days, 13 rounds of voting. It was a truly divided council about the philosophical direction to go forward. And nobody could get to 7 votes. You know, there were 2 people who really wanted it and had very clear visions of what their presidency would look like, but they could not convince a 7th colleague to support them. And after multiple days of very clear, actually, and an increasingly unpleasant bickering and back and forth, somehow I became the compromise. Somehow I knew that might be an option, and I worked real hard to avoid it. But I was able to be the compromise voice going forward. And I truly don't want this job. I truly hate this job. But it's an honor to be able to do it. And it does feel like the city is moving in some meaningful direction. So if that's the case, if my reluctance is very real, but if that is actually a benefit, and it seems to make it, maybe it is, great. I'm happy to be playing that role, but God, this is not the job I want.
Well, I feel like, you know, to somebody who's not an insider or Politico who's been around these things, you think to yourself, well, president, I mean, that's the most powerful of the positions. Yeah. And therefore, you must be able to get the things done that you want to get done because you're the agenda setter, right? But I've been around enough and seen enough things that it actually, and you can embellish my perspective, it seems more like you're the chief administrator. You're the person who has to be more concerned with process and task and, you know, making sure that conversations are had, that there's procedural fairness. I mean, instead of being like, I'm Jamie Dunphy, I ran because I want to accomplish 1, 2, 3, right? Is that accurate?
That's absolutely it. It's not power, it's responsibility. And actually, it's an enormous amount of responsibility with very little actual power.
This is like the opposite Peter Parker, right?
Absolutely.
With great responsibility comes less power.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't get any additional staff or any additional capacity, but 80% of my job now is not focusing on the needs of my district, but what is the needs of the city council and responding to the incoming from not only city councilors who do not agree with each other most of the time, but also the administration and the public and whatever crisis of the day. It becomes my job to figure out how do we get the information to the councilors? How do we get the information to the public? And how do we get through these important votes and these important milestones that have to happen? So it is all about procedure and program and policy. And it's none of the fun stuff that I get to do. And it's extra hard because we're a new body. So we don't have any sort of bookends. We don't have any sort of history of how to work together. And I'm literally building process for every step of this way. I mean, like little tiny things like how much in advance can we see the agenda? It used to be only a week. As of a couple weeks ago, now we can see 2 weeks in advance.
Wow.
And that's little things like that I'm trying to drive forward. That's not what I ran on. I didn't run on increasing the transparency of the agenda by 2 weeks, but the city has to move forward. We have to build these systems. And I have the history of knowing what this city used to be like and working in that form of government and where all the problems were. And I have clear ideas of how to work around some of the weird quirks we have now. So it does feel like it's moving. It does feel like it's better than it was 6 months ago. It feels like it's better than it was a year ago. And that's all I can really hope for is we just make it a little bit better tomorrow.
Well, you know, as somebody, I was counsel for the Senate and House Judiciary down in Salem. And I can tell you that whenever something came up, the very first question was to the person with the most seniority, like, how do we usually do this? What do we usually do? And you are in the unenviable position of everyone being like, well, we've never done this before.
Yeah, truly. I mean, we're 18 months on the job at this point, and there's a lot of the muscle memory of old government, but the old city council was a rubber stamp for the vast majority of things. And there was only 5 of them. And most of the things that the old city council voted on were small contracts for like $50,000 here, $100,000 there. When you're talking about, you know, an $8 billion budget, that was most of their time. So yeah, things moved more easily. The things that actually land on our desk now in this new form of government are supposed to be controversial. If it was easy, it would have been decided before it landed on my desk. So how we find a way through that is a new fun challenge. And yeah, the history of a building of a legislative body really plays a big role. We don't have any of that. And so these 12 counselors are sort of trying to, you know, throw elbows and find their way out of it. It is really frustrating at times.
Well, and now I'm going to throw an even larger wrinkle into the mix. Which is something that you've talked about. In fact, on just this past month, you described the serial communications law as crippling to this council. And this isn't, we talked about, well, the old council, they didn't have to deal with this serial communications law. This is actually a newer thing. 2023, I believe, is when this at least went into effect or was interpreted this way. And what does that mean? We're talking about public meetings laws.
Yeah.
What does that mean when you say it's crippling?
So public meetings law, the basic idea, and I agree with this basic idea, major public decisions should be made with the public's involvement and with some transparency and accountability to that. I absolutely agree with that. That shady backroom, smoke-filled deals, you know, those should not happen. And those absolutely have happened historically. In response to that, the Government Ethics Commission has put these rules that say not only do we have public meetings rule, meaning you can't go meet. I couldn't have a sit down meeting with 7 of my colleagues and sit down. We're going to make this decision and then we walk out there. Totally understand that. But it also means that I can't go and have a series of meetings. I can't go to my colleague next door and say, hey, I'm thinking about this policy. What do you think? And then hear from them and get a little bit of feedback and adjust it. And then go to my next colleague and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. So we do that in a public setting now. And that is awkward. It is weird. And it is performative because we're on TV.
Yep.
And trying to negotiate the minutia of policy in a public setting like that, where we could have had a very quick conversation behind closed doors and said, hey, I cannot support you if you do X, but if you do Y, I will support you. And it doesn't change it. I could have done that. I could have gone through, and instead we end up in these awkward, ugly positions where we're fighting about minor details. And the public thinks that, you know, there's an idea of transparency. And there's an idea of accountability to the public. And then they see what that looks like and they don't like it.
Right.
You know, we get accused, oh, why is there gridlock? Why is there all this? Why can't people compromise? Because compromise comes through conversation and we're not allowed to have conversation. And when you're on the dais, it's not a conversation between colleagues. It is a timed amount of speech.
Yeah.
And your audience is not your colleagues in those circumstances. Your audience is the TV, the people in the room, or the people at home who you're going to later clip that video for and post on your Instagram. That's not a way you actually we had a solution to try and get through this too, and the governor vetoed it. So I don't understand what they think success looks like with these rules. This is what these rules are leading to. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing in a way that we need our city's reputation to be able to move forward and not have these amateur stumbling blocks where that could have been taken care of with a 30-second conversation.
Yeah. That's because I do know about public meetings law. I've been, most of my career, part of what I've had to deal with is about all of that. And so I understand it, I think, at a level that most people wouldn't and don't need to. But yeah, from the outside, I hear people, they'll say to me, this new city council, this new form of government, all they do is bicker. All they do is this and that. And I'm like, you are attributing what you're seeing to a new form of government. But really, one of the major things that's instigating this is this serial communications interpretation by the Government Ethics Commission, which, like you say, prevents you from I think most people would assume you could knock on your colleague's office door and be like, hey, we got a vote coming up on this thing. Here's where I'm at. What are you thinking? And that's exactly what's prevented by this law. So here's my hypothesis. Here's my thing I want to pitch at you. And you touched on this. So I think we're in agreement here. People look at the gridlock on this council, 6-6, and they're like, oh, wow, it's, this block versus that block. And I think that one of the reasons for that is exactly because of this serial communications interpretation. You can't have a conversation ahead of time. And I'll even ask you this. This isn't applicable to our state legislature. Is that right? Because they caucus, because they have communications. They negotiate across the aisle sometimes and say, hey, our position is this. What is your position? What do you want in response to that? They do that. So how is it that this applies to you, but not them?
Oh, it's explicit. The state legislature exempted themselves from these same rules. So every city council, every county commission, metro chamber, all these public bodies, all the way down to, the local volunteer neighborhood associations, like they have higher levels of ethical requirements than the state legislators who passed these laws. It is truly absurd. There are no requirements for the state to limit even committee quorum limits. We have, in the city council, we have these committees that are 5-member committees. So I'm not on any of them because I'm the council president, but a councilor cannot have a conversation with 2 of their colleagues about a topic at any given point. How do we actually move the ball forward on that? I understand we're not trying to make final decisions on things, but even our staff can't talk to each other. But in the legislature, they can get all 30 senators or whatever it is into one room and talk at once.
Right.
It is and without any violation. It is mind-boggling. I understand the intent. I understand that, where we're trying to go, but this ain't it. This just ain't it.
Have you been able to, or has council been able to, maybe sit down with the governor's staff and say, hey, what was the thought process here? How can we make this a bill that you would support? Yeah,
we talked a lot before the legislative session. I haven't had a chance to talk to her about that since then. And I don't know where those conversations are, but our this is not just a city of Portland problem either. There are, there's like the Oregon League of Cities is actively concerned about this and working on this. The Association of Oregon Counties is working on this. This is a much bigger thing than just a Portland. Portland is visible because I think we're the only professional city council in the state. Professional, full-time that we are. Right. This is our full-time jobs. And so it's a daily annoyance. But, the other part of this is that when we cripple the elected officials from being able to do their work, we over-empower staff. And that means that while in the city of Portland, we're stuck bickering, in cities like, I don't know, Eugene or Bend or Burns, suddenly that empowers all the bureaucracy and takes up a lot of the power away from the elected officials because they're now a rubber stamp. So they've got to fix this in the next legislative session. I'm certain there is a solution to it. I hope the governor will figure out whatever it was that was a hang up for her on this, and we can figure out how to actually move things forward.
All right. Well, that's probably more time spent on public meetings laws in a podcast than than ever before. But I think it's so important. And one of the things that I hate just personally is when people see one thing and then they think that that's causally related to another thing.
Yeah.
When there are these hidden things that are actually contributing to the issue. So I like lifting that up. I want to get into budget season.
Yeah.
You all just officially adopted your second budget as this council. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Budget. I mean, it both is one of the most challenging things. People say it. A budget document is a values document.
Yeah.
And you know, it's always a challenge. And then as soon as you put one budget to bed, you're working on the next budget. But so as I've been talking to people and just have conversations around, you know, one of the things that I've heard that I think is hard for Portlanders to wrap their minds around is that, and I pulled some numbers for this, that in 2020, the overall budget of the city of Portland was around $5.8 billion. The budget that you all just passed, I think, is closer to $8.6 billion.
Yeah.
So in just the span of 6 years, our overall budget has almost gone up by $3 billion.
Yeah.
I need a pinky in my mouth to say that.
Yeah.
And yet we just had a massive gap that had to be filled with cuts. We're talking about the same things, not having enough money. We had to pass a parks levy. We had to, you know, figure out ways to fund potholes. And I think a lot of Portlanders are scratching their heads being like, how do we have more money by a significant margin than we had 6 years ago? And we feels like we have less money.
Yeah.
What do you, I'm sure you hear that.
Absolutely. You know, so yeah, let's, no one quote me on exact dollars. I'm going to use some round dollars on these things, but yeah, we have roughly an $8 billion something budget, but some of that is the majority of that is stuff we cannot touch. Debt service, the fire, police, disability, and retirement system. A lot of the sort of grants that we get for capital maintenance and things from a lot of these weird categories of dollars that we can't actually touch. There's also some budget bizarreness that I don't really fully understand, but we have what's called an overhead model where basically we don't budget for IT services. We don't budget for HR services. We don't do these things. What we do is we inflate the budgets of the Parks Bureau. And then when they use IT services or things like that, they get billed for that. And so it means that, yes, it's an $8 billion budget, but it's a little bit of, accounting math. Within that, though, the general fund, which is business license taxes and other sort of general taxes that we can actually use to pay for parks, to pay for police and things like that, that's about $1 billion. Absolutely, it has increased overall. We've gotten, the water filtration plant. We've got all these other things. Within that $1 billion of the general fund that we are able to affect, we had a $170 million budget gap. And that is where we pay for most of our city employees, is through the general fund. So it was the biggest structural budget gap that we've had since the 60s. It was one of the hardest budget gaps to try and fill, and it came with some real deep cuts. The overall budget is, the way we do budgeting in the city is not transparent. It's not clear. It's not accountable. We don't, even the way that the budget is done by Multnomah County is far more accountable just in terms of reading Excel spreadsheets. So I really think there needs to be a lot of work on just understanding some of the basics of what our budget is.
Yeah. Well, and I think, as you say, you had to fill a gap that is historic in its size this session, but the structural deficit of this budget is not going away.
No.
What I've seen in the projections from your own budget office is at least 18 to 36 more months of deficits that you're going to have to. So something's got to give, right? I mean, there really are only two levers when it comes to to money, just like a person who's balancing their own checking account, right? It's like you either earn more money or you spend less money. Yeah. Where do you see the opportunities here in Portland? Especially, there's a lot of conversation around the tax burden in the city being too high.
Yeah.
So how do you see this structural deficit going forward? What can you do? How can you navigate this?
We're going to need to have some very big conversations. this last budget, this is my second budget. This is the second cuts budget. There are no more couch cushions for us to check. We are no longer trimming fat, and we have cut down into the bone. We are genuinely sacrificing things at this point. And we know that next year we're probably looking at making real sacrifices. And as I said, the general fund covers public safety, it covers parks, and it covers homeless services. That's the majority of what it is. And if we're having to continue to cut into that, it means that people are going to lose things that they want. And at the same time, it is truly baffling to say that we are tax burdened, that people are paying way too much in taxes, but government doesn't have any taxes.
Right.
Where the hell are those dollars going? I think that this is a real honest question. I also recognize that as everything else gets expensive, as gas crosses $5 a gallon, as milk crosses $5 a gallon, as we are seeing grocery stores close and people having to travel further for that, and every little bit of the federal government's penny pinching that is happening is tightening everywhere. It is easy to say that government taxes are the problem because people feel like it's the first thing that they would like to cut. It's something they don't choose to pay for.
Right.
Our tax revenue is down. Our tax revenue is down in every category. Business licenses are down. General property taxes are down. Real estate prices are tanking. And it is genuinely cutting into our issue. And then we also hear a lot of people who are able to grumble about things like the arts tax, like the preschool for all tax, when the overwhelming majority of people in the city do not even pay those. I get it. I get the real feeling that something's got to give and every inch is getting pushed in different directions. I'm feeling that certainly, but this has got to be a regional conversation about what do we actually want to pay for? What are some things that are actually important, and how do we pay for them? Who is paying for them? And somebody in this economy is getting rich right now. It's not most of the people I know.
Well, congratulations. You passed the presidential test of knowing how much a gallon of milk costs. Well done. Turns out you're a real human being. Yeah, well done. But also, I do want to get into another aspect of your personal backstory, which is you have been a small business owner. Yeah. And I think I want to understand and hear from your perspective. You ran a small business called Love Cup.
We did.
In Sellwood.
Yeah.
And you actually have firsthand experience with the challenges of being a small business owner. One of the things that you mentioned as a pressure on our tax revenue going down is less business licenses, right? And you've been a small business owner. You no longer are.
No.
And so how does that factor into, I mean, again, back to you can either make more money or spend less money. How do we help small businesses? How do we preserve and support the ones we have? Because one of, I think, most Portlanders' favorite things about this city is our small business.
Absolutely.
That is the thing that we get excited about when we're telling other people how great Portland is.
Absolutely.
So how does your small business acumen, history inform you and how we can support our small businesses and even increase them?
Yeah. Well, first, I wouldn't have anybody take any business advice from me. My wife and I opened a coffee shop in February of 2008 as the economy was collapsing around us due to the housing crash. And we couldn't understand why no one would give us a business loan. But we, through personal loans and our savings and some scrapping it together, we ran a little coffee shop and a sandwich restaurant for 5 years and sold it for a profit. And my God, that was one of the most challenging periods of my life. Little things that they just simply never tell you about. Why am I paying $200 a month to TriMet? I literally called TriMet thinking, is this because I have a bus stop in front of my house? No, it turns out that's just a business tax that they pass on, and no one explains these things to you. Why do I have to pay $100 to put a sticker on my sandwich board out in front of my shop when none of my neighbors also have that? Like all these little things that we never explain to small business owners. There's no check sheet. There's no like, oh, so you want to open a coffee shop in the city of Portland. Here's the 15 things you have to do. We don't do that. Other cities do.
Yeah.
90% of the employers in the city employ 10 or fewer employees. We are by definition, a small business town. And we need to be really intentional about that, because those 90% of small businesses close in their first year, and 90% of those fail in the second year. If we aren't constantly trying to look at how do we make it easier, cheaper, and more accountable for these businesses to open, then they will just continue to fail, and we'll see greater consolidation and more corporate. Take a look at, let's use the example of the Clean Energy Fund, right? Yep. The Clean Energy Fund is a tax on the largest corporations that are doing more than $1 billion globally and $500 million here locally. And it is raking in so much more money than it ever thought it would, because those corporate profits are high. But we're also seeing bars and coffee shops and restaurants and boutiques close all across the city, because none of those folks have the deep well of capital and investment that they can rely on. We have to do better. We have to be very intentional about what kind of a city we are. We did just cut business taxes for the smallest businesses. We are working on trying to cut things like some of the smallest burdens, and trying to make it recognize that a local coffee shop that is trying to open for the first time is fundamentally different than Starbucks expanding.
Right.
And what kind of support does that person need? We have an Office of Small Business now, and they're fantastic, and they're doing really great stuff, but it's not enough for me. They can't help with permitting. They're more like little grants and some street activations and things like that. I want to get into the permitting bureau, and literally I want to have how-to manuals. There's no reason that we couldn't have a how-to manual, and you assign one permit person to that business owner and say, you're going to go talk to John, and John is going to make sure that you get your health license, that you get your business, your occupation or building occupancy license. You're going to get all these things done. And here's the checklist that you can take home and say, here's what you're going to do to open a coffee shop. Here's what you're going to do to open an at-home business. Here's what you're going to do for, your Etsy shop, or whatever these little things are. It's not hard. We just don't do it. And our system isn't set up to do that. But I think that certainly would have helped me as we were opening it. And I really want to do those things.
Well, one of the things, a critique, especially of liberal and progressive places, is that for many good reasons, we have all kinds of regulations and we have all kinds of taxes and other things that are go to good things, right? But sometimes those are the very things that get in the way of business growth, development, businesses choosing to locate here. And so this has been called the abundance theory, something that, you and I have discussed before. Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, can a progressive liberal place that is doing the right things, can we, decrease some of that burden, make things better, and incentivize the growth?
Absolutely, we can do that. The city's book of city code grew from, I think it was like under 300 pages back in the 80s, and now it's over 1,200 pages. We can absolutely simplify these things. I'm not saying we sacrifice on our values, but there are a ton, and with every single page of that code, there are so many good intentions.
Right.
And the road to hell is paved with those good intentions as well. There are some things that are truly in conflict, and the Bureau of Transportation and the Bureau of Environmental Services and the Water Bureau, they don't coordinate when writing their rules. So that's why we see things like when the Transportation Bureau will pave a road, and then 6 months later, the Sewer Bureau will tear up that road. And those things are relics of the old form of government. Actually, this week, I am introducing a bill that is specifically about answering the question of who is on first when it comes to decision making. Like right now, if you go get a permit, you talk to 12 different engineers. It goes to all these different departments, and the Bureau of Permitting can't tell the Bureau of Transportation, hey, I need this back in 30 days, because they have their own authority. We got to get basically just back to basics, understand like who is on first here, who is in charge of getting this permit out the door, getting these regulations, things of understanding how we do business in this city. And I'm not trying to make the city's permitting system the best in the world. I just want it to be as good as Gresham or Hillsborough or Beaverton. Like, they have figured out how to make it so that it is simple, fast, and cheap without sacrificing on safety or cost. It's just so frustrating that our system isn't working in any sort of customer service focused way.
Well, you heard it here first. We're breaking news. You got a bill coming this week. Absolutely. I'm excited to see that move through because I couldn't agree more. I know you yourself, you're a musician.
I am.
Among many other things that you are. Also, one of my favorite aspects of things that you do is fixing children's Star Wars helmets. Yeah. Thank you very much.
That was a fun project.
You do many things. You're I would say, a Renaissance man in the traditional sense. Music is important to you. You ran on music as a development strategy for the city. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. You know, I grew up as a musician in this city. And my experience is that music has been treated as a nice to have. It's been treated as part of the arts. It is, at best, it's been treated as part of the arts. At worst, it's been treated worse than that. Music at its core is a tool for getting people together. Whether it's music in the background at a picnic or people actually at a concert, I think it's an opportunity for community to convene. And I think that's a huge part of what we've been missing. I fundamentally believe that we will never be able to hire enough police to patrol up and down Hawthorne Boulevard at 2 a.m. to have the same level of effect as a concert getting out at 2 a.m. and people being on the streets and walking to bars and restaurants and being around each other and having that sort of activation. We need reasons for people to get out of their houses. Music venues and performances are saying that we're only at about 80% of the audience level of pre-COVID levels. It means people are staying home. They're choosing to, and there's a 1,000 good reasons why people are staying home. Things are expensive. Mm-hmm. Downtown has had a terrible reputation, not only reputation, but actually genuinely scary for many years. It's not like that anymore. And we need to get out of the house. We need to get people out from in front of their Netflix and out amongst each other, spending money, enjoying time, building culture. That is jobs. That is economic development. And that is public safety. If we treat the arts, if we treat music as a nice to have, as this twee little thing that is precious, and if you hold it in your hand, and otherwise you're going to drop it and it's going to break. That is the first thing that gets cut out of every budget. If you talk about it as jobs, economic activity, and public safety, nobody argues with you there. I mean, the basic premise is that if you put a concert in the park, you're less likely to have someone shooting up or shitting in that park. It's that easy. And then we can use our precious public resources for public safety or in very intentional ways, rather than assuming that we can over-police the entire city and that will somehow make things move forward. The only solution we have is each other actually getting out of our houses and being around each other. And I think that's music. I think that's what music is a tool we can use for.
I love that. I mean, as the former district attorney who was the DA during COVID, right? I absolutely agree that, one of the things that we saw crime spike nationally and internationally was because there were just less people out and about and on the streets, and less eyeballs, and just less community and social compact, right? When nobody's around to finger wag at people.
and it's there's an old history of using artists to gentrify neighborhoods, right? That's an old adage. Is you have a shitty part of town. I don't know if you're allowed to curse on your podcast.
Yeah, no, it's fully an adult program.
Awesome, good.
NC-17.
So you have a shitty part of town with some spaces that nobody can use for any real meaningful purpose. So you put artists in there, right? And then they build something cool, and then suddenly the new coffee shop, and then the new restaurant, and then suddenly the artists can't afford to be there anymore. And in the old form of government, I actually wrote a report on how the city can preserve affordable art spaces and not lose it because of how fast things were gentrifying in this city. Turns out that report is completely irrelevant now, but I actually am going to actively use the tools of our own gentrification to try and bring Portland back, because we have this amazing arts culture. And right now, downtown, if you are walking by a building that is boarded up and has plywood on the walls, that's not encouraging people to go out. But if instead we could get, I don't know, a dance troupe to rehearse in that vacant store, or an artist to just stand up and do their studio painting for even a short amount of time, that is inherently so much better and gives a better sense of community to people. So this seems really easy to me. I don't know why we're not doing more.
One of the things that I think can help a city and a lot of this, as I live through, a lot is based on vibes. Yeah. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's a true thing.
It's a very true thing.
And one of the things that I think can help the vibes is big swings, big projects. And there is right now an international design competition for the Tom McCall waterfront Park Bowl.
Yeah.
So maybe tell people about that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we know that the waterfront park is our gathering place for our city. Mm-hmm. We know that is where the Waterfront Blues Festival is going to be happening, where Pride Festival is going to happen, where all these different concerts and festivals happen. That is our city's real living room. But we don't have any infrastructure there at all.
Right.
Every time you have a concert in the park or vendors setting up things like that, we kill the grass.
Yep.
We spend all this time replanting it afterwards. We can't run microphone cables from one side to the other. So you have those dumb little like black and yellow tent things that cover them.
Yep.
We know there's going to be concerts in the bowl. There's always going to be concerts in the bowl. And it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to set it up for the 4th of July weekend for Waterfront Blues. What if we had a permanent stage that was there and we could have equipment that was built in because we know we're going to use this space? What if we built a little bit of infrastructure into what is right now a beautiful lawn, but we know there's going to be spaces where there's going to be vendor tents and people are going to have to walk along here. I've gone to some of these festivals like Pride where it rains and then everything's muddy and smelly, and we could have avoided those things. If we're going to be intentional about a city that wants people to gather, then we need a little bit of infrastructure, and we can't assume it's going to casually happen. And we know that these festivals are also struggling.
Yeah.
And every little dollar that we squeeze out of them and force them to create when it should be a city responsibility is a reason why they can't succeed. So I'm a big fan of this idea of renovating the bowl, recognizing that it is going to be an asset that we use for generations to come and making a little bit of an investment.
I know that this is also being discussed, and I fully agree with this too. I think that we can maximize our use of the waterfront.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like when I go to other cities around the country, it feels like there's so many more opportunities to have dinner, food carts, cocktail, beer gardens on the water. Water.
Yeah.
And so I know that others are thinking about that, working on that. And I hope that is another thing that we think, because it can be such an economic engine.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, it's not even that it's negligence or that the city just didn't happen to get around to it. There genuinely was a philosophical belief by previous city commissioners that parks are places of solace and reflection, and they should have nothing to do with commerce. And that's why we don't have restaurants in some of our bigger parks. That's why you can't get a snow cone at Laurelhurst Park. Like, it's that basic idea of like, commerce and recreation should be completely separate. And I want a hot dog. I want to be able to go sit down in a restaurant and look out at the river. I want to be able to go touch the river in a meaningful way and go swimming if I want to. We cannot be so precious about these things. We have to be very intentional. And we're just at a point as a city where we're finally coming to reckon with some of that.
Yeah. You touched on public safety, which I appreciated. And I love your vision because it aligns with my vision that public safety is so much more than the number of police or prosecutors and the jail and all this other things. That's a component, no doubt about it. But I think we should be thinking about it more expansively and holistically. And so I appreciate that you do as well. And there is currently going to be, it looks like, a ballot initiative that voters are going to have to make a decision on. That is, and they're getting a lot of flack for this, being touted as a way to decrease call times for police. And we can talk about call times for police in this city. But what it is going to do is it would increase or peg a staffing ratio that must be maintained, and they would pay for it out of our PSEF dollars. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about what is it, and then how do you see it?
Yeah, it's a deeply cynical and factless assertion about what public safety is supposed to mean. The Clean Energy Fund, as we know, is a tax on the profits of the wealthiest corporations to have a dedicated funding source to a generational challenge of climate change is happening. It is going to affect the communities that have the least, and we need to instead move the other direction. What the police union and this group have done, first of all, they've lied to the public over and over and over again in a way that there should be protections against this. That I watched in my neighborhood, I watched these people who I don't think they were doing it nefariously. I think they were genuinely just hired to do a job, and they were trained wrong. And they were telling people, oh, we're going to get more 911 call operators. We're going to get more firefighters for these things.
More mental health
thinkers.
Yeah.
That's absolutely not what this is. And anybody who does a plain text reading says they're basically just trying to hire about 400 more cops. There is also a really misguided idea that there's a ratio of cops that we will ever meet that actually matters, because there's some really important factors here. In the cities where they have higher ratios, they consider their 911 call takers as cops. They consider their crossing guards as cops. In Portland, our Portland police officers are the most expensive, most highly trained tools in our entire system. The amount of training and the amount of pay that we give to each of our police officers is wildly more than, say, New York City. Right? Where in New York City, you're having a cop who's making probably $60,000 a year, standing on a corner, sort of flagging traffic. That is not what our police do. And if you actually included all of the things, all the 911 call takers, all the PS3s, all the Portland Street Response, all the alternative responders, we're a lot closer to that. Now, if the police union wanted to reduce the salaries of their officers to what they receive in those cities, maybe we could have a conversation about that. And perhaps we could even do it with the existing resources that we have. It's just a deeply cynical approach to try and say that there's some magic number and not understand that our system is fundamentally different. And you can't just assume public safety by a dollar amount.
Well, and to your point, this has been a debate for a long time in Portland. It's not new that we need higher staffing ratios. Sure. And they use that number that we're one of the lowest staff by the way that things are measured.
Yeah.
And it sounds like from your experience and research into this, all of our cities don't even measure it the same way. Yep. So that's misleading.
Yep.
But I've done, some of the looks too, is I've traveled around and talked to my colleagues, progressive prosecutors across the country. In Milwaukee, I find to be a good comp for Portland. Similar size, similar demographics, a lot of things in commonality. And they also spend almost exactly how much you all spend on their police.
Yeah.
They also have twice as many FTE for the exact same amount of money.
Yeah.
So to your point, and I know this to be true, it's true of prosecutors, it's true of police officers. We have some of the best paid, most expensive police and prosecutors in the entire country.
Absolutely. Every year when the Oregonian publishes the salary of every City of Portland employee, the top 100 are always cops. And some of them are making up. I mean, I saw one make almost $500,000 because of the amount of overtime that this officer was doing. First of all, that's a problem. We should not be having officers doing 80-hour shifts.
Right.
That's crazy. There's no
It's not safe for them. It's not safe for us.
No.
It's bad policy.
It's bad for every part of that. But I don't think if you look at New York City, the top paid people are going to be cops. They're just not.
Yeah.
It's deeply cynical. It's deeply inappropriate. And also it assumes this fundamental question that is a cop the right answer in every situation? And we have answered that as a community. No, it is not appropriate for us to take the most expensive tool that we have in our toolbox and waste their time filling out paperwork at car crashes or going to a business that had a break-in overnight and there's no active threat. Why are we sending an officer with a gun to do that? We should send a person with a clipboard to do that. And we do. They're called PS3s. Unfortunately, the mayor just cut a lot of those out of our budget. So now we're going to be even seeing worse of that time. But it's deeply disingenuous to the public. And it's really frustrating that we've been having good conversations about this. But even, you were saying call times even.
Right.
There is something fundamentally wrong here.
So one of the things about this ballot measure is that it would find the funds from our clean energy fund.
Yeah.
And I think some of the misleading talking points that have been being used is, oh, this is excess funds. It's going to take it from the excess funds. Talk to us a little bit about what should people know about these claims of excess funds and the clean energy fund? And then what is your take on using that fund for this purpose?
Yeah, there are no excess funds. There was a narrative. There continues to be a public narrative that there's this fund received so much more money that these idiots couldn't possibly know what to do with all of this. And at one point when the fund first opened, yes, there was an excess of funds that they didn't know were going to come in. And so it took them a little while to spend them. Those dollars have been spent. And we have created very intentional processes that are called, there's the CIP, the Climate Investment something. I don't remember what the P stands for, but basically it is a 5-year plan of how to spend every dollar in all these different categories. And it's public, it's transparent, it's accountable, it's decided by community members, and it's approved by city council. And there's little tiny updates that happen every year. But the CIP has been really robust and demonstrating where these dollars are going to go, what organizations or what kinds of organizations should be able to get them, and who is supposed to benefit from them. Mm-hmm. This program has been one of the most accountable and robust public dollars programs that I've ever seen. And they did it out of necessity because from the jump, there's this false narrative that there's just money lying around.
Right.
There is no money lying around. Everything has been accounted for by public bodies and promised to future uses. So anything that changes from that means we're going to have to go back on some of those promises.
Well, and that, my amateur advice to the folks who want this PSEF fund, the Climate Energy Fund, to be protected and to be able to be spent the way that is the plan already for it to be spent is, although this exists, we have to do a good job of talking about what is this fund funding in our community? What are we getting for it? What is the 5-year plan? Because I know it's transparent. People can go look for it,
right? But
we need to tell the good stories. We do workforce development. We're helping people get trained into green jobs, which is huge, right? Yeah. And other organizations are using PSEF dollars for other things. And I also remember it wasn't that long ago when Multnomah County experienced a heat dome.
Yep.
And people died.
Yes.
Like death because of environmental factors.
Absolutely.
And you represent the eastern part of Portland. One of the places, probably the place in Portland, hit the hardest by the heat dome, for sure. And I know that these dollars go to things that could help mitigate future heat dome deaths, for example. So do you have a few on the top of your head of examples of things you've seen this fund pay for?
Yeah, it is like, first of all, I think that the way that this fund, as you laid out, not only is it dollars going out to get good outcomes, but also who gets to benefit from those dollars in the process. We're training people to do the green energy jobs of the future. It's not about just putting solar panels and air conditioners in every affordable housing apartment. The investment in trees, the investment in water systems, the investment in community resilience, those sort of things are massive. East Portland has the lowest level of tree canopy, right? We are a combination of what used to be apple orchards and now large parking lots and freeways, essentially. We're going to be investing millions and millions of dollars into new trees and making sure that they get watered and that they grow to their full potential. Training the people of East Portland who maybe have some of the least economic opportunity right now into the green energy jobs of the future, so that we have these young people are able to go out and install wind turbines or work on some of these big projects or understand some of the ways that community can deliver energy in different ways. Really rethinking how our grid works and how we're delivering services, to looking at our transportation system, all these big things that are leading to bad outcomes, not only in the climate world, but in public safety world and in all these other costs. This is a system that is going to move us towards a really robust future of how we do the work. We know we're always going to be doing the work. How are we doing it? And what kind of city are we like in 30 years?
Well, and that exactly right. That's what I love the most about these investments is you plant a tree. It's not like you need to plant the same tree again the next year and then the next year. And you planted a tree. Yeah. That is going to benefit people in our community for decades.
Yeah. And it's honestly, there's an expression, we're planting trees under the shade of whom we'll never sit, right? Mm. It is hard for people to think 30 years in the future when they're worried about what's happening today. That is what PSEF was about. PSEF was always about taking the burden away from having to figure out what are we going to do in 30 years. We've answered the question. We're going to set up now the success that we have in 30 years. And that is not satisfying to most people.
Right.
People want results now.
Yep. Well, I know that well. So PSEF is a great lead into the next segment that I want to talk about, which is the Moda Center.
Yeah.
Because as the state and the city and the county all think about, what should the public investment be into this arena that is owned by the city, PSEF dollars are one of the things that was like, how do we pay for it? Oh, hey, look, you know what it reminds me of? PSEF reminds me of, remember those old Looney Tunes cartoons? You're on a desert island and you and your buddy, you've been there for a few weeks and he starts to look like a hot dog.
Yep.
Yeah. PSEF is the hot dog.
PSEF is the hot dog.
Everybody's staring at each other and be like, whoa,
I want that.
I'm going to eat my friend.
Absolutely.
Right? That's what it is. Yeah. So here's yet another thing that is going to be potentially targeting and discussed is the Moda Center. But to zoom out from that, just this past week, you put out a newsletter that said, here's where I stand on the Moda Center. So why don't you just articulate that for folks who are listening, who probably should sign up for your newsletter, maybe don't already receive it. Sure. But where do you stand on the Moda Center?
Yeah. There's a lot of conversation that's happening in our community and a lot of numbers getting thrown around, a lot of big, flashy headlines and some in good faith, some not. Mm-hmm. The Moda Center is bigger than the Blazers. It's more than just talking about giving money to a billionaire. The city of Portland owns the Moda Center. Should the city of Portland purchase the Moda Center? I think not. I think we should not have. I wish we hadn't. But the previous city council acquired it for $1, understanding that at that point, 3 years ago or whatever it was, 4 years ago, that it was going to take $400 to $500 million worth of renovation. And they did that full-eyed and understood that was what they were signing up for. I think it was a bad call, but that's where we're at. Mm-hmm. The Moda Center is the most outdated arena in the NBA. Undeniably. It is not meeting the standards of sports, but it's also not meeting the standards of all the other uses. We cannot get some of the best concerts right now because our stage and lighting equipment can't handle it. We can't even get some of the fancier Cirque du Soleil acts to come to Portland. And as I said,
no offense, Cirque du Soleil taking strays in this.
No, I want them to. I want them to. We just can't accommodate their stage setups because we have 30-year-old equipment that we can't plug LED lights into in the right way. Like, it's some of that basic stuff that if we have a public asset and we have a responsibility to use it, we have to use it properly. And I also think we aren't using the Moda Center properly anyway. Mm-hmm. It's only activated about 150 nights a year. It means 200 plus nights a year. It's sitting dark. There's no good reason for that. And if we're going to make an investment in that, it has to be towards making sure, as I said earlier, activation, giving people a reason to get out of their houses as often as possible to come and do that. I'm not a Blazers super fan by any stretch. I'm glad the Blazers exist, but I've only been to one Blazers game in my life. But we need to keep the Blazers here. They are a part of our cultural identity. They are our biggest tenant of this space. And they are a huge economic driver in this community. But it's, again, not just about the Blazers. It's also about the fire. It's also about monster truck rallies and everything else. I'm really frustrated with the way that the Blazers and specifically their new owner has been carrying themselves. Yeah. I mean, the performance that he put on at the Moda Center for the Portland Metro Chamber event, if he was actively trying to piss off Portland, he couldn't have done a better job.
Yep. Agreed.
And it's not about him either. He gets to be an asshole if he wants to be. We need his team here. We want the team here. We've got to figure out how to do this. The finance side of it is complicated, but relatively straightforward, right? The state of Oregon, we said, a number of years ago, $400 to $500 million. The Blazers are using a $600 million figure. We will figure out what the actual number is. Mm-hmm. We're getting architectural designs and figuring all that out. The state of Oregon is giving us $365 million. Multnomah County is going to put $88 million up front and $13 million in ongoing. That means that basically the pie of dollars that we would have to do is almost a 3-to-1 match that the city would not have to put in. If we don't meet this timeline, those dollars all go away and the city is still on the hook for hundreds of millions of dollars. If we don't take advantage of these timelines right now. Like, I mean, there's some conversation about, well, it's a false timeline. Well, these, the state legislature can do these things again. They're not. They can't. We have to issue bonds by this certain time. We know that the NCAA women's finals are coming in 2030. We need to have the facility ready for them too, when they get here. In addition to the 3-1 match that we're talking about what is the city's investment? When the sale of the team goes through, we're going to get a big chunk of cash from the business license tax, something like $40 to $50 million. That makes sense for me to put that back into the building. We own about half the parking garages. And we get a fee on every ticket. It's a 6% fee on every ticket sold. It makes sense to me to put some of that into the ongoing maintenance in the facility. So the question there is, now we have about a $75 million gap. Is that a real $75 million gap? Like, is that buying the executive suites and the fancy locker rooms?
Right.
Or is that buying air conditioners and getting rid of the diesel generators? And the mayor has proposed to use PSEF dollars for that $75 million. And there's absolutely an argument for that. They use diesel generators to operate the building right now. Nothing is energy efficient in any capacity. And it's also always better to build something in place rather than knock it all the way down and use the new concrete and all of that.
Right.
If the Clean Energy Fund Committee says this is a good use and we are willing to sacrifice on the things that we have already put in the CIP and are willing to no longer do that, I'm fully in support of using those dollars in that way. If they aren't, then I'm not. And we will find another way to fund it. There are other options before us. Is that a real dollar amount? And how do we pay for it are real important questions. And we're going to bring the public along for every step of that. We're trying to be as transparent and accountable. We have been doing a lot of community sessions, trying to get information out there, trying to do as much media. We have some really good information on our website. If you go to the city council website, there's a whole bunch of really good documents. You could dig into the Excel spreadsheets. You can see the condition assessment report from 2022 that shows where all these things need to happen. But it is just really hard and to try and bring everybody along on this conversation. And I'm just going to say one last thing. I hate that we're having a conversation about the MOTA right now. This is not the most urgent issue in our city by any stretch. It is, we have other crumbling infrastructure. We have billions of dollars of crumbling infrastructure, not even in, the Keller Auditorium, the Schnitz, all these other city-owned venues, but also roads and bridges and park lights and all these things where we should be spending other time. But unfortunately, this is where we're at. We have to make a decision about the future of the Blazers. We have to make a decision about the future of the Moda Center. And I think we will be able to land this. I think that despite all the noise and despite all the distractions, we will find a path forward to support the Moda Center, keep it active so that it doesn't become a big burden, and keep the Blazers here for the long time.
Well, I so appreciate you talking to me about this, but also that you put out, in writing for anybody to read, hey, here's my position on this. One of my biggest criticisms of this entire process has been the lack of communication and very unclear communication. Yep. And even I myself have been like, I feel, hey, giving $600 to a billionaire, I'm against that. Everybody's against that, right? Yeah. Oh, well, it's not actually giving $600 billion to a billionaire. Right. It's an asset that the city owns. Oh, okay. Well, let me recalibrate my thinking on that, my position. And meanwhile, you have this billionaire who is doing all kinds of antics to make the community hate him, which it feels like is intentional because he doesn't care about Portland, to state it mildly, all the way from not giving our T-shirts to the fans during the playoffs to, his conversation at the Moda Center with the chamber, basically saying, I pay taxes. That's enough. Yeah. Right. And so he's doing everything he can to make people feel away. So then you feel like, and everything is in the context of, national politics, national sentiment. We can't help it. Right. No. And so we see billionaires and now trillionaires like Elon Musk and others who are actively robbing us blind and the futures of our children in this country, robbing us. Yep. And now here comes a billionaire into town. And, hey, we actually have a little bit of say in this, maybe. So let's, try to whack him like a piñata. And it turns out he's kind of an asshole. So that makes it even more enticing, right? And it's like, there's emotion, there's feelings. We're cutting a city budget. We're backing out services. We're laying off public employees. And then we're going to find money for a Moda Center. So it's so complicated, because there's emotion, there's also, a good conversation to be had about reality of what needs to happen. And another complication, as you laid out, there's an opportunity right now for the city to get matching funds into an asset that it must maintain no matter what.
No matter what, it's ours.
And I've said this to other people, and they say, well, don't look at it that way. You look at it as it's $600 billion. I'm like, if I am voting on the city council, I am very much looking at my pocketbook. Yeah. I, Mike Schmidt, am critical that the state jumped out ahead, made decisions without you all. I think that mitigates your leverage, and also incentivizes you now to make this happen, because otherwise you're on the hook if it doesn't. So this is massively complicated. And I guess my biggest criticism for all the folks, starting at the governor, the legislature, our mayor, all the way around, and the Blazers, whatever.
Yeah.
I guess they don't feel the need to explain this to the community. I think they should, but they haven't felt the need. But the communication around this has just been awful.
Yeah.
And it's left us feeling like we are all, on the Scooby-Doo team trying to research this ourselves.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Absolutely. Ultimately, systems are built by people, and we're building a new form of government. And I honestly, I will go ahead and take some of the responsibility for this, because, as I mentioned earlier, as council president, it's my job to be responsible for getting information out to the public and to all the councilors in a way that they can actually hear it. And most of this noise around the Moda Center happened in the middle of the budget. And I was already operating. As I said, I don't get additional staff. I don't have any additional resources. And I was trying to navigate through the budget process while the media story about the Moda started getting away from us. As soon as the budget ended, we put the whole of government towards focusing on getting this out there and really trying to improve our communications and our external engagement and things like that. And we've done a lot in the last couple of weeks, but the media loves some of the more controversial stuff. Some of my colleagues are running for re-election, and so their positions are maybe slightly more extreme than they may have been, or they're at the very least louder. Mm-hmm. Social media gets away from us very quickly and defines things and really took away the narrative from us. And so I'm desperately trying to pull that back. And I'm not necessarily trying to pull it back towards a specific outcome. I'm not a cheerleader for this project. I want to get a process together that says, like, is this actually the right decision for our community? I'm convinced it is the right decision for our community. But we have to bring the community along for it. And I think in the old form of government, we wouldn't have even seen that stuff happen. I think this would have simply moved along and people would have not had an opportunity. We're going to get benefits out of this thing. We're going to get something that the community feels proud of. I'm not going to bankrupt this city and condemn future generations to a bad deal, but we need to understand what a good deal is too. And the community is just as evenly divided on this as well. We got polling that said 49% were in support and 46% were opposed. Yeah. That is not a clear path forward for me in one direction or the other. So we have to just thread this needle and try to bring the community along with it at every step. And government does a really bad job of telling our story.
Well, I think, and I've been thinking about this issue, talking to people about this issue for a while. Thank you for putting something out there.
Yeah.
I feel like just the basic facts around this have not been laid out. And I also feel like, the mayor sent out an email that I thought was needlessly petulant and seemed angry that people hadn't already figured out what he figured out. Mm-hmm. And it's fine that he's arrived at a position. He has more information than most people have. Yeah. And so I'm okay with that. But to be angry at the public for not being to where he is when they don't have the information he has, that struck me as off-putting. Yeah. Quite frankly.
Yeah. It was deeply unhelpful in every regard.
So I super appreciate that you are having this conversation. We're talking about it today. One of the things, obviously there's this group, Rip City, not Rip Off. I think that they, as just, people, this is not their job. They don't get paid to do this. No. Are putting a lot of information into the public that wasn't there. Yeah. And I think they should be commended for that.
I agree.
one of the things that I've seen them say is about the manager, the operator of the Moda Center.
Yeah.
And in my mind, and again, here's more nuance, right? It was like, oh, we're going to give Tom Dundon $600 million. Well, no, not actually. He also is right now, as the contract is set up, the operator, but that's a different entity than the Blazers owner. It's an operator of the Moda Center and the Blazers owner.
Yeah.
And so the $600 million is really going to renovate an asset that the city owns, but the operator operates and derives revenue from.
Yeah.
And so it's another layer of complexity. One of the suggestions that I've seen put out there is why not open up the operator to a competitive bid process?
I think that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of... I think it makes a lot of sense. I think we need to make sure we have the right operator and that the city is getting a return and that it's not just assumed that we're going to hand it to Rip City Management, which is a separate but deeply connected business to the Blazers. Rip City Management handles, not only Blazers games, but Fire games, but also circuses and concerts and all the other things.
And to your point, if they're only right now booking out 150 nights a year, maybe they're not that great of a manager.
Honestly, yeah. And I think that some of that is our requirements. We have not been in a position to demand. And the reality also is that Tom Dundon and this new ownership group are very business focused. I don't think that the Paul Allen family really were as business focused. It was really more of a hobby for them. So they're looking at the bottom lines. And that means the city has to look at our bottom lines. This is our first real opportunity to do that and have questions about some of the specifics. And I don't think we're going to get everything out of this deal. I would love to see, like at the airport, the cost of a burger or a beer is the same outside as it is inside. I would love to see that at the arena. I don't know that we're going to get to have that, but I want to make sure we're talking about that.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to make sure the city can generate revenue off of this in an ongoing way and that it ultimately pays itself back and then some. We're going to find a path on that, but I don't know what that exactly looks like because I've never negotiated a deal before like this. We have to have some idea of what our bottom line is. It's not a giveaway. This is an investment. This is about an investment comes with a return. And I need to know what that return is at every angle. And if it is ensuring good paying jobs for the workers inside of those, working at every one of those concession stands and every construction worker who's going to be building the new renovations, that's absolutely up to us to figure those things out. There's a lot here that we can demand. And now is the process where we are actually figuring out what are the things that we even want to negotiate. In fact, the next big step for city council is on August 12th. We're supposed to vote on what's called a term sheet, which is just the basic outlines of these are the buckets we're going to talk about. It's not going to have dollar amounts. It's not going to have specifics, but it's like, what is even the universe of things we're talking about? Let's put it on a piece of paper. And that is coming in the next couple of weeks here.
Good. And you mentioned negotiating. I know that you have in your office Metro's Chief of Staff, Kristen Dennis.
Yeah.
Could you say a little bit about her role in this?
Yeah. So I got a phone call from my friend Juan Carlos Gonzalez, who's our new Metro Council president. I've actually gotten to know him for over 20 years. At one point, he was my intern when I worked at Senator Merkley's office. Again, talking about how small this city really is. But when he came into office as council president, there was already a staff from Lynn Peterson, and Kristen Dennis is a longtime political operative, I think is how Willamette we called her. But I had the opportunity to work with Kristen when she was chief of staff to Ted Wheeler, and she is brilliant and thoughtful and very process driven and very has a great job of understanding both the small details and the big picture. And so Juan Carlos said basically, he doesn't have a revenue stream that they can dedicate. They don't have a big pot of money that they can put in, but they wanted to be able to help land the deal. And so Kristen has been helping us just sort of be a go-between all the 12 city councilors and the administration and the county and the state, and sort of having one person who is a little bit more neutral, not part of, a single political office. She's reporting to me, but she does not work. I don't pay her salary. She does not work for me. But just having that neutral third party who has a pretty clear sense of process and a hand on the wheel has been really great. She's been wonderful to try to help get just better information out there, get the counselors to feel like they are part of this process, and bring the public along. So it's been wonderful. Just a little bit of capacity, because again, as council president, I have all the responsibility, none of the power, and no additional resources.
Well, that takes me to my final question for you. We've talked about some of the big issues in front of the council. We've talked about the budget. We've talked about some big swings that we could take. I think a lot of Portlanders are looking 3,000 miles across the country right now to New York City.
Yeah.
And are seeing a lot of things that they really like. And I hear people on a regular basis being like, God, I wish we had Zoran Mamdani here in Portland, right?
Yeah.
Because he's doing big things. And we see, he obviously is a Democratic Socialist candidate. We're seeing Democratic Socialist candidates win across the country, but also here on our own council. You're the council president. You're not the mayor. We don't have the same form of government. We don't have the same issues. We don't have the same scale of things that New York has. But are there things, you must be yourself seeing some of the things and be like, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Are there things that you're looking at, maybe New York or maybe anywhere that are getting you excited and you want to see happen here in Portland?
Absolutely. And, I'm not a DSA member, but I am a strong progressive, and I'm historically one of the progressive members of council. I don't caucus with the progressive caucus anymore, but I'm a progressive in my values. And I have been really excited about what's happening nationwide. And I've been really excited about what's happening here in Portland. Let's talk about a couple of basic things.
Great.
I represent East Portland, right? Everything east of I-205, an area of town that people forget is part of Portland. In fact, most people at one point sort of thought that 82nd Avenue was our eastern edge, when it's actually our geographic center. I represent 150,000 people of East Portland who have never had a voice on council. Only 2 commissioners in the history of the city of Portland have been elected from east of 82nd, and now there are 3 councilors on this council. Little tiny things are making a difference. Yesterday, we had the grand opening of the first public plaza east of I-205. It's not a big deal in general, but like for people in East Portland, it's a huge deal to have something for them. And we're getting sidewalks, and we're getting potholes filled, and we're getting trees planted, and we're getting assistance to renters on the east side, and we're getting assistance to the maintenance of our parks, which we're always the first to get cut. They always cut the maintenance in East Portland before they cut it downtown. Yeah. All those things are really moving in a different direction, and my neighbors are feeling it, that their quality of life is actually moving in a different direction.
That's awesome.
And then you look at things like housing. The city has, for decades and decades, invested in affordable housing. But how we invested in affordable housing is we cut a check and we patted ourselves on the back, and then we said, job well done. What we're moving towards now is a model of social housing where the city continues to have an ongoing ownership stake in what the housing is built. And so that we can have an ongoing interest in making sure that it's not falling apart and it is serving the people well and it's keeping costs low. And that we actually have something on the other side of this to show that we're investing in this and we're getting results. We can't demonstrate that we have results right now, but I think that one of the most progressive things we can do is demonstrate how we're spending our public dollars and who is getting served by them. There's a lot of those things that are happening in a real meaningful way. Some of the conflict that we see on city council is because we are making decisions that previous city councils never could before. And it's supposed to be controversial. It's supposed to end in tie votes. It's supposed to be hard to try and move these things, but we're actually having those conversations for the first time in 100 years. People are actually represented, and the city council isn't just a blank, a rubber stamp to whatever the administration wants. I feel genuinely hopeful about where things are going. We don't have the kind of capital to be able to tap into like Zoran Mamdani does, but some of the basic things of understanding who are we serving is a fundamental question that has never been asked. And I think we are finally asking that question here in the city of Portland.
Well, that's so good to hear. And I think a lot of the enthusiasm for what we're seeing, in New York is that he is laser focused on issues that impact everyday New York City residents and things like sidewalks and potholes and, community projects that are making, playgrounds and parks better for kids to access and things. So I hear your focus is on the same types of issues. And I think, sometimes, and this was my experience as district attorney, I'd go around the country and they'd be like, "Oh, I love what you're doing. I can't believe you're doing that. It's so great. It's so, this and that."
Yeah.
And I'd come home and people are like, "Oh, whatever."
Yeah. Yeah.
So some of it is that, right?
Absolutely.
A prophet is somebody from another town.
Yeah.
Right. So there is that, but I hope that as you all continue to do these things, that we get the word out.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so important that we celebrate our victories and celebrate our wins, and that people can see their lives improving.
Absolutely agree. Yeah. It's one thing to do the work. We also got to talk about the work.
We got to talk about it.
And we got to make sure everybody knows that good things are happening, because good things are happening in this city right now.
I'm going to leave it there, Council President Jamie Dunphy, but you're not off the hook just yet.
Okay.
If I know you're a longtime listener to this program, so you won't be surprised that we have a quiz portion.
I'm ready
for you. And because you're the president and because you like music, I have merged those two things and put together some questions for you. And we will see how you do.
Okay.
And, if you pass and you win, then you win.
Great.
If you fail, then you can't leave this incredibly hot studio for another hour.
That sounds fine. I deserve that if I lose.
Okay. All right. Here we go.
Okay.
Number 1. Name the Seattle rock band formed in 1993, whose biggest hits were Lump and Peaches, whose debut album cover originally featured a photo of the band with the actual sitting president.
That is the presidents of the United States of America.
I got to start you off easy. I know, right? Bonus points for if you can name the sitting president.
Was it 94? So it would have been Clinton?
Clinton.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just a little math.
Easy. Yeah.
All right. True or false?
Okay.
The FBI spent over 2 years investigating a Portland band's song for secretly obscene lyrics and still couldn't figure out what was being sung.
I think that's true.
Bonus points for the song or the band.
Oh, God. I think I know this. Nope. Can't pull it out.
It was true. You get the point.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You'll get to leave, hopefully. Louie Louie by the Kingsmen.
Right, the Kingsmen.
Yes. Recorded in one take at a Portland studio in 1963. The FBI's conclusion to their 2-year investigation was that it was unintelligible at any speed, whether or not they were cursing.
Those commies.
Isn't it amazing to think the things that in the 60s, like, were there obscene lyrics in this song?
Oh.
A 2-year investigation.
Play it backwards and it's Satan speaking. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And now look at our president of the United States. Well, all right. What 1968 hit memorializes Lincoln, JFK, MLK, and RFK, and all in one set of lyrics?
Oh my God.
I didn't know this one.
I have no idea.
All right. Well, you're wrong.
I'm wrong. I got this one. I truly.
Apparently, the song's name is Abraham, Martin, and John, originally recorded by Dion.
Okay. Never heard that one before.
Me neither. But I'll have to listen to it.
Yay.
Which president used Fleetwood Mac's Don't Stop as his 1992 campaign anthem, later reuniting the band for his inauguration?
That's Clinton again.
It's Clinton.
Yeah.
The dates give it away.
Yeah,
Which rock icon objected when Reagan's 1984 campaign tried to use Born in the USA?
That was Springsteen.
Which rocker sent cease and desist to both Michelle Bachmann's 2011 campaign and Trump's 2020 campaign for using his songs?
Oh, God. Is it an American?
Mm-hmm. And he's no longer with us. He's passed.
Oh, God. Nope, I'm blanking.
Last Dance for Mary Jane.
It was Tom Petty.
Tom Petty.
Oh.
Tom Petty.
Oh.
What song became FDR's unofficial 1932 You were there. 1932 campaign theme?
Was it something like You Are My Sunshine or something?
I mean, it would have to be, right? Yeah. But no, good guess. Happy Days Are Here Again.
Oh, okay.
That makes
delightful.
Sense. Happy. All right. What Seattle rapper known for the Sonics anthem Not in Our House teamed up with 2 members of the Presidents of the USA to form a side project called Subset?
I've never heard of this. That's amazing. I don't know who.
Sir Mix-a-Lot.
No kidding.
Yeah, I didn't know either.
That's awesome.
I'm
I'm gonna look that up.
We're gonna have to go look this up.
Yeah.
All right, number 9. You've only got 2 more to go. You're doing well. True or false? The swirling mural on the cover of Elliott Smith's Figure 8 is a Portland landmark.
That's true. Right? No, wait.
False.
It's not. It's in Seattle, isn't it?
It's in LA.
It's LA. Ah, nuts.
It's on Sunset Boulevard.
I knew that one.
Even though, of course, Smith is deeply tied to Portland and moved there as a teen and formed Heat Miser. Helped build Jackpot Studios.
Yeah, he did.
Figure 8 was his LA record.
Damn it.
All right.
I'm embarrassed now.
All right. Here's a final question. This is for everything.
Okay.
If you get this right, you win. You're not. You
I'm
don't.
a loser.
All right. Should you, Council President Jamie Dunphy, introduce a resolution declaring Louie Louie as Portland's official city anthem, beating Oregon's failed state house attempt to the punch? Because apparently at some point, Oregon debated making it Oregon's song.
They did do that. I think I probably should introduce that. I think that's probably a good idea.
That's the right answer.
Yeah.
Louie Louie.
Louie Louie. Classic. Awesome. Wow.
Council President Jamie Dunphy, you win. You get to leave this incredibly hot studio. Thank you for coming.
Mike, thanks so much for having me.
Jamie, thank you so much for doing this and for being real about the budget, real about the Moda Center, and for indulging me on music trivia there at the end. A quick recap for everybody. We talked about what it actually takes to run a fractured 12-member council, the structural budget hole that's not going away, what it means to actually build a small business and a music economy in this city. And of course, we went deep into the Moda Center because Portlanders deserve to understand exactly what's being negotiated with their money before a single vote happens. If you like this episode, do me a favor, head over to Substack and subscribe. That's where all of our show notes and the deeper dives live. Subscribe to the show wherever you're watching or listening. Leave a comment, tell a friend. Every single one of those things help us spread the word. And as always, thanks for hanging out with us. I'm Mike Schmidt, and we'll see you next week.